we'll
video
tell you a little bit
off.
about our background as a company and where we've been, where we're hoping to go. And I would be happy to take questions after a few minutes of talking. That seems to always be more useful to people so they can get their own questions answered. So I'm Juleka. I am a journalist by training and by profession, 20 odd years in the biz. And I am very fortunate that I've spent most of my career writing about things that are, really important to me and things that are important to people who I write about. And so it's just been a real privilege to have had that type of career. And, I've worked in every job practically in the business. I've been an editor, I've been a writer, I've been a reporter, I've been the head of a desk. I have worked in newspapers, in magazines, in books, on digital, and now I'm, in audio. I've been at The Atlantic, at NPR, and about 3.5 years ago, I decided, okay, it's time. You've been thinking long enough about doing something on your own. This is it. This is the moment. And so I started Latipo Williams & Co. as a place to gather storytellers who wanted to tell some of the same stories that I've spent so much time telling. And, I got my sister to design a website. She's a beautiful art designer, graphic designer. Hi, you're back. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Assuming that everybody.
Juleka, so.
Hi. You're coming across really broken, but I see lots of comments flowing up. Okay. Let me see if I can read one of these comments, you guys, to see what's going on.
Hi, Juleka. It's Matt here. I think since Aaron's having an issue with his connection at the moment, I think I'll just kind of pop in. But we're at a point, really great to sort of hear the background on what you're up to at this point. So if you just want to kind of continue with that and tell us a little bit about your company, and then we can kind of go from there and see if Aaron's connection issue gets figured out. Does that sound good?
Oh, yeah, that sounds great. I wasn't sure if you guys could hear me.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, great. You. So I will keep going for maybe 5-10 more minutes, and then I really would prefer to take questions because it's just more useful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely
do that. Okay, my sister designed my website and my logo and everything else. And then my brother became my webmaster, my IT person, all of the things. And so it was very much a family affair. As the oldest sibling, I marshaled my little army and sent out an email to everybody in all my professional contacts and said, hey, we're open for business. This is what we're hoping to do. And I had only given myself a year, because I have children, I have a mortgage, I have real world responsibilities. And so, no trust fund to sort of float me through exploring this. And I had also taken out $40,000 of my own life savings. So all of those 20 years I've been, digitally putting into my 401k. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to risk it all, but I do think that some risk is necessary. Yeah, I'm here. Are you there? I can see you guys.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Do you have a better connection now? Yeah. I can hear you. It's breaking up, but I can hear you.
I think I do. Okay. Why don't we just your bio and then
yeah. And I think
can you about it again? I'm sorry.
I can't understand what you're saying.
Aaron, I think since your connection's going in and out, maybe I can take over from now, and then if you want to see if you can join with your app on the Run the World app on the phone, that could work as well. But I think for now, Juleka has given a great overview of her work, and we can kind of go with that. Does that sound good? And thank you everyone for kind of sticking with us as we figure out these little tech tweaks here.
Okay, should I continue?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so took a big bet on myself. Decided not to go the VC route because I'm not great at math, but I know that my odds were really small as a woman of color of getting VC money. And I just thought, I have a very high risk tolerance. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I, grew up around communities where I just saw people build things from nothing. And I have lots of women entrepreneurs in my family. And so I thought, listen, I've got my built-in advisory board that I can call anytime. I've got a great supportive family who believes in what I'm doing. I'm just going to go for it. And so I did. And I just set myself, scaling with small goals, small, very achievable goals for the first month and the first 3 months and the following, et cetera. And then I did something probably crazy, but very much in keeping with the idea that if I'm going to only give myself a year, then I've got to try everything. And I sent a blind email to the MacArthur Foundation, to someone I'd met a few years before. And the email was basically, hi, I hope you remember me. We've met a few times because I was at the Atlantic reporting on criminal justice. And your grant supported that work that I did there. And so I wanted to let you know that I've started this company. We're going to focus on podcasts, but I have an idea for you. I have an idea about how we can tell the world about all the wonderful work that you support on behalf of the MacArthur Foundation. And it took me like 2 weeks to write that email. It really doesn't take me nearly as long to write anything, but that email to me felt really important because I had to really know what I was about and my company was going to be about in order to approach a MacArthur Foundation. And so sent the email, took a nap, because the way that I deal with stress is to nap so I can sort of restart my brain. And I couldn't believe it, but within 2 hours, I'd heard back from this person, and she said, of course I remember you. You did wonderful work, and congratulations on launching your company. I'm super busy right now, but I've CC'd my admin so she can get a time on the calendar for us. I'm excited to hear your idea. And just that email alone was such a motivation, right? Because now I had a concrete goal, which was to convince this person that this idea that I have for them was good, right? And so, of course, I spent a month preparing for this conversation because I felt that it was a really high stakes conversation for me as an independent creator, for my company. And I knew that I had one shot. Right? Like there is no other phone call if this phone call doesn't go well. So I basically studied like I was about to defend my dissertation. I studied everything on their website. I knew the ins and outs of their programs. I studied podcasting like I was an outsider. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to not only understand, but also explain everything that they could possibly ask me. And I was expecting to be on a one-on-one conversation with this person. When I dial in, I'm on speakerphone in a conference room with 6 other people in the room. And I was like, okay. I summoned up all the hours, the hundreds of hours of listening to the Hamilton mixtape. And I was like, I am not throwing away my shot. I did my spiel for like 20 minutes, and then I took questions for like 30 minutes. And there were some questions that I didn't know the answer to. And I was like, I don't know that, but I can absolutely follow up with an email and let you know. There were questions that I had not thought through long enough. And I said, oh, you know what? That is something that I actually need to think through. So I was really honest in that first conversation about all of the things that I was sure about and all of the things that I was still figuring out. And so at the end of the conversation, they said, okay, well, we like the way this sounds. It seems, like something that could work for us. Why don't you send us, a concept paper? And I wrote down, send concept paper. And I said, absolutely. But when would you like this? And so they were like, oh, we're going to be traveling. We have this coming up. So how about you send it in a month? And I said, absolutely. That's August 26th. Okay, you will have the concept paper on August 26th. Thank you so much. Hang up, go to Google and type, what is a concept paper? Because I had never heard of that. I had never written one. And so I read, a bunch of concept papers. I read a bunch of how to write a concept paper article. And then, I'm a writer. So I thought, oh, I could write this. So I spent a month writing that concept paper. And the reason that I'm telling this story is that I know now, and I knew about a year after, how important having to write that concept paper was in me defining what this company was going to be about. And it went from me thinking, I want to work for myself. I have ideas. I want to put my own teams together, to me deciding, what is the purpose of this? Why do we exist? Right? What are we trying to say in the world? And having to explain that to the MacArthur Foundation is what really forced me to sit down and define those things. And so I tell that story because now that I'm mentoring people who look at me and say, I want to do what you did, I'm always like, let's go, let's do it. But understand that you have to do some serious deep thinking about not what you want to make, but why you want to make what you want to make, right? Because what sustains you is not the next episode of the next podcast. What sustains you is understanding that you are fulfilling a higher purpose that you set for yourself, for your company, and for your team. Because I have very hard days sometimes. I mean, I never want to quit. This is like the only job I want. But on those hard days, when things fall apart, when tape doesn't sound great, when someone cancels at the last minute, when, there are hard days, you continue to say to yourself, but I am doing exactly what I set out to do. I am still on that path that I set my company and my team on 3.5 years ago. And so doing that was so instructive and so clarifying to start the business. And then, of course, I hustled like crazy. I was editing freelance. I was writing freelance. I was ghostwriting opinion pieces for someone. I mean, any way that I could bring money in, I was teaching workshops. I was doing all kinds of things. And so I understood. I had a year, right? And I had these very tangible goals that I needed to achieve in that year. So then, after they reviewed to end the story, after they reviewed the proposal, they said, okay, we'd like to invite you to apply for a grant. Right? Now is the real application. Now is like the 70 questions and all the paperwork and everything else. And so that took a couple of months to get done. And then in December of that same year, 2007, we were given our first grant to do the first season of 70 million. And that was a life-changing event because that was, $180,000 to make the show. But what it did was it gave us a purpose to come together, right? We had a big, ambitious project upon which to build this company. And so, having that, and obviously having the seal of approval of the MacArthur Foundation, you can imagine, does a lot for your confidence. But more importantly, it does a lot for other people's confidence in having that meeting with you, answering that email from you, being willing to collaborate with you. And so, of course, that helped. But, then we just started to do the work. And then the thing that we made was so beautiful and we were so proud of it. And everyone who worked on it was touched by it. And I think that is part of how we became known for the work that we do. Because everyone walks away owning their part of the work and being proud of their part of the work. And so we just let people grab that and go, wherever they're going to go with the work.
Yeah. Can you tell us, and maybe if you just touch on this and then we can open it up too. But I'm curious, from that sort of initial grant and that initial project, how did you kind of go? Because I know a lot of people kind of get this seed funding, but then when it comes to really turning something into a sustainable business and really growing from that start and that opportunity, that can be a real challenge. And you're going from sort of having to make your case to like a grant funder to really making your case to, you know, other types of audiences and clients and things like that. Can you tell a little bit about how you sort of went on that journey?
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of things happened around that time also. One, the Phi Beta Kappa found me on airmedia.com. I was listed, I'm a member, lifelong. I'm a member of Air. So, you know, Hadley, one of their directors, found me on there. She emailed me and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you. We're thinking about having a podcast. And of course, I was actually driving down from New York, like a 4-hour drive. And I made an appointment to talk to her during that drive. And we talked for like 30 minutes. I told her that, of course, we could do everything and anything, and that I was fully staffed, and that I made us sound really big. I mean, I didn't lie. I had all these people already working on 70 million. So I did have the team in place, and they hired us. That was our first client. They hired us to do this podcast for them. And so that was another really legitimizing thing. That now I had, you know, a grant from MacArthur Foundation, and I had the Phi Beta Kappa Society as a client. And so then I started to approach potential clients, so organizations and companies, with a very targeted pitch about you could be in the space, and this is a way for you to be in the space, and this is how it would be beneficial to you to be in the space. And so I started to have calls. I started to just, you know, generate a little bit of interest in that. The other thing that happened was that Latina to Latina fell in my lap. So a former colleague from the Atlantic who was at Bustle said, you know, called me up and said, hey, we have this amazing editor, Alicia Menendez, you know, part of the deal for her is so that we're going to do a podcast with her, but, you know, we need help. And I was like, absolutely, count me in. You were a great colleague to work with. And she was one of the editors who had kept me working. She kept giving me writing assignments that first few months when I launched my company. So I was like, whatever you want, Emily, just you tell me. So I got hired to consult on this, on Latina to Latina, you know, which Bosso and Alicia Menendez created. And we did the whole pilot season with them. It was so much fun. And Alicia and I really gelled. I mean, she's my work wife today, and we're business partners, you know. And what happened was that after we did the pilot, Bosso said, oh, you know, we're not really sure that we're the right place for this. And so Alicia bought it back from them. And then she and I started a business with Latina to Latina as the foundation. And so that was the other big thing that happened, miraculous really, that now I had this beautiful show that I had helped to shape from the beginning. I had an amazing partner in Alicia, and, you know, not to, you know, sort of like scoop my own self, but we are inches away from hitting our, you know, our first 1 million downloads in the next month. And wow, so congrats. Thank you. And the show is very successful. We're, you know, Isabel Allende is going to be on the March 1st episode to start Women's History Month. And so it's kind of like you show up and do the work, you know, and of course I also have equal number of things that have failed. I mean, let me be very clear about that. I've had to like shut down things. I've had to jettison pilots. I've had to let clients go. It runs the whole gamut, right? So you're getting the highlights here. But the thing is, you have to show up and do the work, right? And show up with the intention of doing your best work every time, and show up in a way where people see that they can build with you, right? That you are someone and your team is a group of people who are willing to extend beyond what we were sort of like brought here to do. And that has always worked really well for us as an approach.
Right. That's great. And I see a question from Alejandra here. She's wondering, do you have news companies among your clients, or are they doing their audio strategy in-house? So sort of how are you finding news organizations as partners?
So we have a hybrid right now. So Farai Chideya, award-winning journalist, she hired us in September to launch her podcast, Our Body Politic, and she has a syndication deal with 3 NPR stations. So right now, her podcast airs on 25 NPR stations around the country through the weekend. And so that is the closest to a news organization that we have. But our client is not NPR. Our client is Diaspora Farms, which is Farai Chideya's company. So yes, so we do make a weekly, actually it's about to go live. We make a weekly news magazine show, which was created and it's hosted by Farai Chideya.
Great. And I'll ask, let's see, are there other questions or anyone who wants to grab the mic now? I'll just sort of reiterate that. I have a one now sort of based on your sort of company website. You talk about how you've really integrated anti-racism into sort of the DNA of how you've sort of built up your company. And I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit about how you've put that into practice in your work.
So I don't think that we use the word anti-racism. We like to use the word, we actually just unveiled the term erasing the margins. We had a visioning team gathering at the beginning of the year, and we sort of realized that what we're trying to do is literally that, erase the margins so that everyone can be at the center of the story at different points, right? So like if there are no margins, then everyone can occupy this space and everyone can take turns being the narrator and the protagonist. You know, it all depends on the story that we're telling. And so the work that we do is, because it is, you know, my team is composed of 90% people of color, right? And that is because most of the story that we cover are, you know, centered on people of color in the United States. And so there is just an imprint that comes naturally to everything that we do, because the lens, the perspective, the history, the political education from which we make our shows is informed by the realities of people of color, right? So, but it's really interesting that we don't go out and say, okay, in this podcast, we must have 80% this or 20% that. Like, we don't work like that, right? This morning, we're working on our first short documentary, and it's about ultra runners. And these are people who run 100 miles at a time, right? It's an incredible thing. It so happens that the protagonists of this documentary are an Asian woman and a white male. Okay, we didn't go out to cast an Asian woman and a white male. We went out to talk about this intense sport, this extreme physical activity that they put themselves through, but it happens that we have a really representative, you know, cast in the documentary, right? And so I think it is a natural awareness that we bring to the show and to that show and to the work that we do, that we live in a world that is really plural in so many ways. And because that plurality is really natural for all of us, then we're going to encounter it and we're going to center that into the work that we do.
Yeah, that's great. And I have so many more questions for you, and your work is so inspiring, but I think we're going to have to leave it at that at this point, because we're at 1:30 now. But thank you so much for just, you know, sharing sort of the entrepreneurial journey you've been on. Your work is really an inspiration to so many people who are out there starting their own things at this point. And, you know, we look forward to keeping up with all of your new exciting projects. So thank you
for having me. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And
bye.
We'll be moving on to our next session on podcasting now. So we'll close this room and then open up that next session. Thanks, everyone.